we are in interesting times, to say the least, especially with like love and relationships and the relationships with ourselves and sex and exploration and our needs and desires and what it really means to be like in open relationships or even like entertaining the idea of polyamory. So this conversation is really a chance for us to just kind of open up about what it's like to expand as humans through this time and, you know, really explore the relationships that we're having and the difficulties that we're having and maybe just bring conversations or thoughts to the table that, you know, people are afraid to talk about but need to. All right, so in this paradigm of love that is shifting, I would say that we have shifted. So I want to know what it's like in your lives right now, like what you're experiencing in relationship, or if you're looking for a relationship, like where you're at in your journey with this whole process. Because I think for a lot of people, the idea of love and getting married and all these like very specific things have kind of been put upon us, and that's shifting. So tell me where you're at in your journey and what you're feeling about being a conscious man or woman for Martina in this time. Who would like to go first?
Well, I'll kick it off. Um, First of all, a lot of dudes on the call. That's
It's a
interesting.
dude call. This is the
Dude
dude
call.
call.
I'm just wondering why that is. Um, but it's interesting because as a guy, we're faced with a bunch of stuff right now, a bunch of headwinds as we try to expand this this Me Too movement, and now there's a lot of accusations and things like that. So it's almost like we're kind of feeling out there blindfolded a bit sometimes. So that's a bit of a challenge. It's sometimes when you're trying to escalate and meet women and talk to women, sometimes you have to kind of double think what you're saying, because normally you might want to kind of have some innuendo to make the conversation fun. And a lot of times that you have to second guess it because maybe that's not going to be accepted anymore. Probably a good thing, but it also has, the other side of it in that it mutes us. It allows us to be, it prevents us from being fully transparent sometimes. So that's a challenge that I see out there. And I notice I travel a lot of different places in the world, and I notice in other countries, they don't have that quite as much, at least from what I've been able to see. Things are a little bit more open, and we have this kind of a puritanical paradigm here where it's almost afraid, we're almost afraid to share sometimes. Like I know I went to 12 years of Catholic school. So even being on this call has me sweating a little bit, and it shouldn't, because this is some of the most important energy that we can have as humans and as creators. This is creative energy. If you read chapter 11 of Think and Grow Rich from Napoleon Hill, he talks about how sexual energy is the key to creativity and how it's created some of the most incredible things in our societies over time. So we should be able to embrace the new paradigms at the same time being open and being respectful. So that's my kickoff for that.
And understanding that it's awkward before it's elegant, right? Like learning
A
what
lot
is
of times.
okay, right? Like dipping our toe and then kind of pulling it back in.
Yeah.
Jesse.
I like that you mentioned that chapter of Think and Grow Rich. I often feel like that one's overlooked, but so important. And depending on what modalities you're involved in, a lot of people associate the sexual energy centers of the first and second chakra with that creativity. And there's an interplay there that I think can come out in a relationship. And when it does, it's beautiful. But in my experience, it can also come in just a wild, like passionate, brief moment. Maybe that's a few days or a few weeks, that in the times when I've like fallen hard and fast for somebody, I feel so creatively motivated. And whether or not that turns into a real relationship with longevity, there's something cool about like a kickstart of creative sexual connection and seeing that come out and play out. With regard to what Rhonda was saying in the beginning, in terms of a shift, or if there's a shift that's underway, which I believe there is, for me, I'm like 37. I always assumed that I'd meet somebody, get married, and start a family, but it hasn't happened. I also always assumed that I'd run a business and work for myself, and that has happened. And it's like, is one at the expense of the other, and or is the timeline just extended, which I believe it is, for men to start a family. On the upper end of the spectrum, I know a few people in their 50s that have just had a kid with a younger woman, but it's kind of, I wouldn't have thought that to be normal or even an option growing up 15, 20 years ago. So that's my 2 cents so far.
It's good 2 cents. Who else would like to go?
So I'll
Don't be
kind of
shy.
continue with what he said. It seems like there is a shift happening where both male and female are kind of breaking out of some of those traditional societal stereotypes and expectations and looking more for their own authenticity and what really makes them happy. And if it's not, I actually have a lot of friends that have made a conscious decision that they don't want to have kids, whether separate or together. And I think we're kind of opening up more to those possibilities that we don't have to continue the same, go to college, graduate, get a job, get married, have 2.3 children and a dog, and wait for retirement. And there's more expansion of possibility in our lives now. And with that, we're journeying into uncharted territory. And that's, I think, leading us to a lot of, not conflict, but maybe unsurety as to where we're going and what we're doing and how to get there, and finding our own grounding and following our own compass. And I can tell you, I definitely feel some of that. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think you just led us into the next question, which is like, we are all discovering our own level of masculine and feminine. It's like a unique fingerprint within each of us where we decide like how that lays and where we go, and watching men be more comfortable being in femininity and like being creative and being comfortable, and watching women like learn their masculinity or maybe stepping into feminine. It's, there's no one way for like what we're learning. Everyone has their own work, but it's interesting because the energies are not meeting right now from the people that I coach and all the market research we've done for the expanded human. Where you guys are at, men and women, it's just not like, we're not meeting yet. And like, so trusting that the energies, or whatever you want to say, like that time, that information isn't here for us yet. So we're all in this exploration of self and understanding our baseline and our boundaries. So what is it like for you guys to step into, for some of you, more masculine energy, and for others like allowing yourself to be in more femininity? Like, what is that like for you? Is it uncomfortable? Is it?
And also how you find new relationships, right? Like, what does that look like now? Because like, I know I met my wife nine years ago, and like I started the conversation, but now you have some dating website that the woman has to start a conversation, right? So like, how do you like, are you still able to be in your masculine when somebody's approaching you, or does that change? And everybody here is somewhat well-traveled for what I know of you, and I agree with what Mark said, right? Certain countries, the woman plays a different role. So what does that look like for you guys now? Because in this particular sense, I've been off the market for a little while, so it kind of works, and it's changed a lot, right? Like 8 years ago, it was okay to say certain things that now you, as Mark said, I wouldn't say, but they weren't meant with anything evil. Like they weren't meant as like a malignant thing. Now it's just like, shh, you can't say that. Don't do it. So
I don't know. I just kind of cringe when I think of censoring myself against conveying something authentically that I feel to a woman. Then again, I think there's a real valid basis for why there's a whole movement around this. Is sadly, like, so many women have been harassed, and there has been like a real history of just gross things being perpetrated on women. Now, I don't think that lumps anybody into a category just by virtue of what's happened in the past. And that's why I always just kind of cringe, is because like I won't accept a label being applied to me. And I think being a man and being in your masculine is maintaining a certain amount of sovereignty over your decisions and your moral rectitude and how one conducts themselves. I find that I can sense attraction being directed towards me when I'm embodying what I'm really passionate about. And if I intersect with somebody in the course of me being fully realized as possible. So whether that's speaking or running an event and being seen on stage presenting, or in a deeper relationship with like an author, and the amount of time that elapses lets us have a deeper, more multidimensional relationship. So I think, where you meet somebody at the point of contact, a dating app, that's just boring. Like, but what communities and what circulation are we in as men where we can come across the kind of woman that we want to date? That's what I ask myself and try to create through hosting dinners or different social undertakings. And yeah, I haven't been in a relationship for a couple of years. So I don't know if that's a function of something bigger, but.
So you would say that the easy way to find women now, or find relationships really, is also the easiest way to have a unconscious partnership? Or are you able on those websites to still find a truly conscious
I mean, I don't
connection?
personally do any online dating, but the best relationships and the best connections I've had, when I've thought back on it, were when we met and I was either fully expressed and just authentically excited or passionate or happy and enthusiastic. And at that point of contact, that dynamic permeated the relationship, as opposed to like, I think it's very common that people will meet and connect over a shared hardship, or two people just broke up and now you catch each other on the rebound. I think it's dangerous to form a connection over something that's negative, because then your connection is anchored in negative energy, as opposed to meeting somebody being expressed and in the direction of, something that is personally has meaning and that one is passionate about.
Well, I think what you hit is, rather thinking of like it's a negative situation, is that if you're looking for someone and you're just coming out of a relationship and you're looking, or you're meeting someone in that, like you haven't done your work, like your boundaries aren't in place, like things aren't happening for yourself, like to go into another relationship, you're just going to recreate the same relationship, right? So like that space, that time alone that people are so afraid of, to be alone. And like, I think that really drives most of our needs, is like, we don't want to be alone. We stay busy. We do all of these things for ourselves so that we don't take the time to sit with ourselves and to sit with our feelings and to understand ourselves and to do our work. Then we just, perpetuate it into each relationship.
I would add that there are a tremendous amount of like degrees of separation between age gaps. I think I learned the hardest and most difficult lessons by coaching a group of women since they were like 10. And not only watching them grow and having to represent safety for them, but watch the way they're interacting with men. And I mean, young boys really in many ways, but communicating with somebody, I'm 32, at 35 is very different from 27. The way that online dating has really become safe is feminine energy. And that seems to be very, we'll say, effective. I'm not sure if that's appropriate or not, but it's safe to communicate if I make the ground safe. But the playground of like quantity is also quite dismissive when there's a problem. So you're just like, it just becomes like this open landscape to toss away what's no longer valuable, which also exacerbates the problem. So relationships are not valued very highly. And, there's a small hiccup, it's thrown away because there's just access at such a high level. And in the space of a few years, that has dramatically shifted like the way that you perceive these things online. So you just go online and, you know, it's all very surface based. And even if you connect on a really deep level because you're able to communicate consciously, it still is like, oh, I haven't heard from this person in 3 hours. I'm moving on. And if I look at the way that the group of young adults that will be, you know, entering their 20s in the near future, they don't even meet in person. And it's a radical new world of communication. It's a radical new world of creating safety through communication that is mostly feminine energy in my experience. But I agree, Jesse, like hitting your stride and being able to live into yourself as authentically as you possibly can is a great way to make connection. It's just, I think it's becoming harder to do that because connective tissues aren't as strong online. They don't last as long. Why would they? There's too many options.
Right. So that really is the big question. And I know this is like a big question that the women in this group are really curious about, is like whether you're in a relationship or you're not in a relationship, but as a man, like what is it that you guys are looking for? Like what's shifting? Like what is attractive to women now? Like what, you know, we have this story in our head about like what we think it is or why we think we're not being chosen to date or all of these things. And like, this is an important question, is we need to understand what you're thinking. So what is it that men today are looking for?
So I really want to share this because like this is a place of struggle for me. And this is kind of the question behind the question. As an entrepreneur, I'm consistently on lookout for better, bigger, and more opportunities. I'm always hunting for that. And I'm really nervous that I can't shut that valve off in relationships. Mm-hmm. And as my business grows, as I grow, as I change, like that evolution is happening so fast. Like even a year ago today, I was a completely different person. And despite being incredibly conscious, I'm still incredibly, like I shake thinking about how much I'm consistently looking for better and like mindful of, you know, in the entrepreneurship where I can just taste things and I can try them and fail at them. And that's encouraged. Honestly, it's rewarded. And I'm really scared that like I'm carrying that same mentality into a relationship. If it doesn't work, toss it away. I'll get a new one. It's messed up.
Well, that's the issue with personal development, right? Is like it's this endless quest of becoming more because you're not enough. And like
yes, I'm glad you're saying that, Rhonda.
I know, well, it's my book.
What comes after personal development?
Yeah, so someone should write a book about that. But it's like this endless quest of like being on this hamster wheel, like looking for more and more and more and more, and like you're never satisfied, rather than stopping and sitting down in your ass and sitting in your shit and like listening to how you feel, right? And for me, like I went on a fast, started as 90 days, no sex, no masturbation, no dating, no books, no podcasts, nothing. And like just really sitting with myself. And it ended up going for 2.5 years and really learning how to sit with like my dysfunction, like my need. And I mean, not everyone's going to go to that length, but it's an endless quest, especially with love. Like there's more sex, there's better sex. There's more.
I mean, I'll share my perspective after Aaron shared his. Like when I think of a relationship, what I'm looking for, I used to think I would want to date an entrepreneur, but when I did, it was like, it didn't work because we would each grow and develop and eventually sooner than later changed in different directions. I'd be more interested in having somebody to have like nice meals, travels with, that's kind of amused that I'm so involved in my business sometimes, but doesn't really care like beyond a quasi surface level, in the sense that I'm not looking for like professional validation through a relationship, but somebody that is fine to talk about it sometimes. And then maybe sometimes we don't even touch on anything related to business, and that kind of dynamic and conversation where it's like, kind of, I've always thought of it, I guess, historically, as when I'm done with my work stuff, then I switch gears and engage in relationship, whether that's a date or a weekend trip. But having some boundaries around it, doesn't need to be a connection on every level where, you know, there's business admiration or some dynamic there, as well as personal attraction and shared values. Like it can check a few boxes and still be pretty darn good.
I was just going to say, what about you, B-Star? Let me unmute you.
Oh,
You're good.
I was going to say, well, just to discuss some of Aaron's fear, and I'm sure other people's fears. I was on the move I'm 43 now, and I was living on the road. I was a DJ I still am, but I was not ready for any kind of like relationship. Even when I'd be in it for a little while, and I was in and out, and then I was dating. And what happened was, like, it's kind of odd to say that I think age is applied. It's like when I was 37, I was not ready to like be settled into something. And then I met my girlfriend Crystal, and a whole another aspect is that I had to convince her that I'm not gay, which is a delightful conversation for any party. But I really wasn't ready until about a year ago to say, okay, I'm ready to like hitch on to this woman and like, let's, circulate around the universe together. After many conversations, and realize that it's like relationships are not as closed as they used to be with the right person. We don't feel the need for just like complete, like, you're the only one for me, I'm the only one for you. And that's a long conversation to have. But just to even have that little glimpse of, okay, if anything ever happened or you felt something with somebody, let's talk about it first. That doesn't mean it's the end of our relationship, because there's so much to offer in the world. And to close yourself off is like saying, oh, I only listen to classical music. And then, oh, okay, what about African music? What about pop? Whatever. I feel that there's a danger in closing yourself off to anything. But a big thing that, you were saying, Aaron, is that, you have this like drive of like a better, what's the new thing? What's the now thing? And I had that for many years. It's the thing that drove me to like be able to create on a level of like things that like kids that are 23 liked how a 2-year-old was DJing. And it was because of that mentality. But I hit a certain point where I am able to kind of slow down and be like, okay, I met a woman, not a girl. That was a big thing for me. Who like I'm able to see a future with. And sometimes it just takes time. And I'll end with that.
I love that, B-Star.
Yeah, good stuff. I think also it comes down to lifestyle and values, right? So maybe to answer and address Jesse and Aaron, you might be going, well, this is a throwaway relationship just because you're not locked in because of lifestyle and values. It might be the right person, just the wrong timing. So for me, and I know you, Aaron, and a couple of you on the call, part of your lifestyle is travel. And so that's a big deal. Like for me, that's a big deal. Somebody's got to be able to travel, and they might be the greatest person and maybe perfectly locked in on a values basis. But if they can't be with me, that makes it tough. So I have a couple of friends who are some premier sexual healers in the world, and they firmly believe that you should be in a relationship. You should be in business with the person you're in a relationship with. They think that having the right place with the right partner and the right purpose all align together. And if you are in different businesses, to answer a couple of the entrepreneurship thoughts that we have, if you're in different businesses, you're not growing at the same level. I'm not sure if I agree with it, but that's like their firm foundation of what they teach. It's an interesting concept, but
yeah, I mean, I'm in business. I'm in business with my wife, right? Like the Expanded Human is the first kind of project in the last 10 years that my wife is not involved in. And there is that element, and there is that play, and there is also that, because I tend to naturally gravitate to a much more intuitive, feminine energy, right? And like I am not shy to admit I like being a big spoon at times, and sometimes I want to be a little spoon. You know what I mean? And I'll fucking say it. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, can you hug me now? Like, is it my turn? Like, what the fuck is going on? And it's hard at times, but to me, it's all about like how well can you communicate? Because you feel the problems. And I think, and I truly believe that what makes problems is not the problems, it's just how you handle them. And you hide them and you harbor them and they grow and they grow. And then you don't even fucking remember what the initial seed
That's
was.
right.
It just fucking is this fucking massive tree. Like it's like when you leave for a little while, there's this little weed that is growing by a tree, and then the weed becomes the tree, and you're like, what happened? Like, where is that? You know? And it's being really good at like communicating in the moment of like, oh, you're making me feel this way, and communicating. And it's also being okay with that. The perfection is in the process, is not an end destination, right? Like falling in love with the process of learning how to support your partner, and that's going to change also, right? The way I wanted to be supported like 22 is now I want to be supported now. So if my wife just knew how to take care of me when I was 22, would I feel supported now? But whose jobs is it? It's all fucking self-love. And then I learned how to love myself. I think Will Smith talks about it, or Jada Smith talk about it. It's like, I'm going to work to be the best version of me and loving myself the hardest. And you work on being the best version of you and loving yourself the hardest. And then we love each other.
Right.
But you're not at a half, you're at a whole, right? Like we're two whole people. I don't complete you, you don't complete me. I don't need you, you don't need me. But we met, right? And we're in this moment, this part of this journey together, and we're like, fuck it, let's hold hands and let's walk. You know what I mean? Let's see what the fuck happens.
Right, but it takes an incredible level of vulnerability and honesty to be able to be like present in the moment. And, you know, I think that the old paradigm of love was really built on this idea of trust, like this box of trust. And if you do these specific things and you live this specific way, then we can love each other. And then one of the people didn't feel like what was in the box, so they're like going to lie or cheat, or they're just going to go do whatever, or they're going to feel like they're dying inside. And I think the big shift that's happened is we still need an element of trust to understand those pieces and to be safe, but really being open to showing up every day in truth. And that may be, hey, today I'm having some feelings about someone else, and like being able to be conscious enough to sit down and have a conversation. And we have somebody in our lives who have really demonstrated this pattern where one of them was really feeling like they wanted to open the relationship up, and they both went through the process and they both sat down in these conversations, and they were able to like learn, and their relationship evolved and grew, and they like the things that needed healed, and then the relationship never happened. But if we can't explore being honest about where we're at, you know, it's a really hard space. So how do you guys feel as men and in your own journey and your own work about showing up in like that level of truth? Is it important to you?
Well, it has to be. And on the other hand, sometimes it's difficult because you don't want to hurt the other person, or you have a perceived filter or an assumption that the other person's not going to accept it. And maybe that's based on a past belief and maybe it isn't. But that sometimes prevents the transparency. And so the weed starts to grow, to use E's concept there. And if you're not addressing things, it does grow. But then on the other hand, the other person may not be ready, or you may not be ready to have a vital conversation. But that takes away from intimacy, because right, the intimacy is the energy. Sex and intimacy and energy, they all flow together. But if you don't have one of them, if you don't have the trust, it's very difficult to create the intimacy, because you may not feel ready to cross the chasm to be vulnerable and allow yourself to be vulnerable, because you may not want to hurt the other person.
But as a woman, I can honestly say that I would way rather you be honest with me than try and spare my feelings. And like, so then it's growing into that, like it's not going to be easy for me, and it may be whatever, but like, I would way rather you show up in truth and be like honest in that process. And like, I think that's where we're not meeting yet, is
Is
because
that as a woman or as an expanded human? Because I don't know if every woman has that belief that, oh, just be honest with me, hurt my feelings, it's great.
No, and you're right. So, but as my expanded woman, as the being that I am now, like that's my preference. And I can definitely say, like, there's lots of songs that there's a Sheryl Crow song that talks about like just tell me lies, I'll believe them kind of thing, like whatever, just so that we can stay in love. And I used to be that person, but
Yeah.
I think that that's really shifted now. So where are you guys at in that process? Like, how do you feel?
I wanna say something about that specifically is with so many options in this new world, it's a matter of self-respect for me. I'm trying to get myself to the highest caliber that I can for myself, and in doing so, that weeds out lower caliber women, people that would bring down my vibe in essence, people that would slow me down or not raise me up, I guess is a better way of putting it. Basically focusing my attention on women that are expanded within themselves. I'm not trying to teach anybody. I'm not trying to have anybody learn from me. I think we should learn from each other, but that's not like the main focus. I think a lot of people try to focus on the other, who they want to be with or how they want that person to be, but I think that's all bullshit, because that's an image that you're pushing onto somebody else and they'll never ever fill that. And so for me, it's just like a self-awareness, I guess. I just try to really focus on how my life would be expanded by a partner and then finding the vibration that matches that. And that's where I try to sit with this.
Good.
Well, and a great activity is to create a list of what you're looking for in a person, and then create the list, which is much more important, is who you need to become to be with that person. And that's the list you focus on, right? Like, yeah.
I started writing poetry to her or to she. I don't know who it is, but instead of just a list, because I like to be creative, I started writing poetry for somebody that I haven't met yet.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I keep going back and forth if I should just share it publicly and then that person will like see it and be attracted to me. But I think just writing it is a nice activity in itself.
That puts the energy out there too.
Yeah.
What about you, Frank?
Oh shit.
I'll unmute you, brother. I got you. Or maybe I don't. Can you unmute him?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, hello, group. Nice to hear you and see your faces and stuff. And most of you I know, some of you I don't. Yeah, first of all, a lot of good points. Jesse, I love what you just said. That was, I don't think you should share it. I think you should just, continue to write it. And I think when you experience her energy and stuff, you'll be like, I've been writing this for you. I just didn't know it, neither did you. So I think that's awesome. For me personally, Rhonda, we've had several conversations. I think when I started my personal growth journey, climbing that mountain, I really, really wanted a woman that was like that was wanting that, sharing those values of growth. And now I think I'm getting to that where what E would, or was it what E was saying, or actually I think Jonathan was just saying it. Being that person and experiencing the same person, but without having to teach. I think personally, I was always trying to figure out, I can bring someone up that didn't get to be around the same people or same groups that I was, so I shouldn't penalize them. So I would try to figure out how I can bring someone up, and it was just very overwhelming. So I think now for me personally, just being authentic me, enjoying my life, and just, I've met a couple people that do the same, and anytime I'm around them, you can just feel it. Like it's not a worry. It's just kind of, I like that. So I like women to be authentic and just to really have that self-confidence and whatever, doesn't matter what they believe, just really actually believe in it, rather than just someone telling them something and they're like, oh yeah, I believe that this week, and well, I believe that next week. And so yeah, just being able to sit with yourself.
We've all been the person who's liked somebody and like we weren't there in growth, right? Like, and then we've also been the person that's had people like us and they weren't there in growth. And it's like such an interesting awareness that comes. You're like, oh, that's what I was like.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm even getting to a point where I was just thinking about this the other day about relationships and marriage and polygamy and not monogamy and all that stuff. But I don't know. I'm getting to a point where I think as of now, I feel like titles, and because there are so many options, like everybody was saying that, you know, instead of putting on that pressure of having this title, like we got to be married or I want someone just who wants to spend time with me. Pretty much it. Like, you know, there's not a contract. I think contracts put all this undue pressure nowadays, even though obviously marriage, all that's good, it's supposed to be good. But I feel in today's day, I just really want someone just to hang out with me and want to be with me. And if you want to go, you know, I have to be able to sit with that. But I don't want the deceiving. And I think with all that unknown, people tend to lie and cheat and do all that when they're trying to honor their contract, but they really don't want to be in it. So it's like, so I think personally.
Really? Well, and if, esoterically, if you look at like what happens in a marriage contract, like we're signing up for way more than we even know, right? Like, so there's way more to signing any contract and spiritually or physically.
And also when the whole institution was kind of like created, originally was a business, right? Like that's where, and originally, like I say it like it doesn't exist anymore. Like most of India, their marriages are still arranged marriages. It is a marriage of business, making either a financial choice for the family or making the family look better or expanding the genes of the family. Yet their divorce rates are exponentially less than ours, right? So you're just like, and there is that element also, right? And I think being blessed, being born where we are, we have this infinite luxury of having choice.
And
right?
we suck at it.
Yeah, but it's because we have too many choices, right? Like in India, like they're like,
this is it.
This is who you're gonna marry, and they're like, I don't like them. Very good. Learn how to.
Right, but then we see all these videos and TEDx talks, and women come out about these arranged marriages and the abuse and all the things.
No, of course, yeah. But at the same time, it's all creating the reality of it, right? And it's all creating all of it. So it's like kind of like as men, we have a choice, and we are kind of like pioneering now, because the way it was for my dad or the way it was for my grandpa, it's not anymore. So like, where do we, you know?
I want to straddle Mark's point and Frank's point with what may seem a little outlandish, but stick with me here. I've been in situations where I know I can pick up the breadcrumbs along the way to know that when we have that conversation, it's going to end. And as a very old soul, I just try to hold on to that moment very selfishly. Simultaneously, I also have this resonance that suggests that there is no there. And having a relationship where, you know, your counterpart is like, man, when we get married, it's going to be great. And like the whole push, the drive, the engine is like to get there.
That's right.
And I like tennis match. I literally like scrimmage myself in my head, and it's just this fucking bounce and bounce, and I never settle. And that friction creates a lot of weeds that turn into trees. But I feel grounded in, if we're here, let's be here. And then that creates the problem of, well, shit, I don't want to have that conversation because then we're not here anymore. And I don't know, maybe it's the tennis match that I'm somewhat attracted to, right? The challenge of it all, like figure it out, like unpuzzle this thing and like unravel it. But between those two ferns, like I don't know what to do.
And also we live a lot longer, right? Like at the beginning of the institution of marriage, people were living, what, 25, 30, 40 years maybe?
Well, there was a quote I saw the other day, and it was something like, between here and there, like the journey, that the distance between here and there is stress. Like it's, rather than just being here, which is present, but trying to get there is like all of our stress, it's all of our overwhelm.
Yeah. But I think we see also how people are not having kids.
Can I chime in?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I'm in my 40s. I have never been married, and I've consciously chose not to have children. So I've never wanted to be married until my early 40s. That's when I was seeking a life partner. And I've always known that. I think because intuitively I knew there was more. There's more to life than a house, a kid, a job. To me, that life I did not seek. To me, that represented like a prison. Just me. But Rhonda has known me for years. How I've changed over the course of years has really changed the type of man that I'm now seeking. More of a conscious man, in the sense where we can have this relationship where one doesn't carry the relationship, right? Because it tends to be, I've had a history relationship that was out of balance, and it was typically me carrying the relationship. But me stepping into my feminine a little bit more and allowing myself to be vulnerable with the man and honest of where I am, and supporting him in where he's at in his journey, and I agree with E totally. It's not you make me whole, you show up as one whole person and you meet another whole person and you journey together. And I think where we are for me, it's just such a beautiful place where we're at, but yet it's very, very frustrating. I live in Chicago, and the lack of awareness is a little bit different than I think where some of you live.
It's all over.
It's all over.
So,
It's thin at the top, Martina.
yeah. Anyway, so that's just wanted to kind of chime in as a single woman, and I love my independence and all. I love, it's just I need somebody who will blaze a trail with me.
Yeah.
Who is not, trying to suck me down to their level.
But you're a strong woman, Mama. Like you're like, right? Like it's going to take a strong partner to be with you, or a partner that can be flexible and like hold your space. It's just, it's the same with me too. But you own a home, you make good money, like you do all the things, right? Like you've done those things for yourself, right?
And for years, I've had people tell me, well, maybe you should not be so strong. Maybe you should just,
Fuck that.
But truly, stop being so picky, and and just, you're never gonna,
Lower your standards.
Well, thank you. Exactly. I was looking for that. It wasn't coming to me. But to me, like, sorry, I'm gonna now stop. Like, most people's relationships, I'm like, I don't understand how you're not so bored.
Right. Well, and that is the thing. It's like, I'll be with you rather than be alone. Like we need to be, we are the greatest love of our lives. Like becoming that, right? Like that's wholeness, is like, I'm okay. Like, and I wasn't for a long time, but I'm okay. Like if it's just me this lifetime, like I have amazing love going on. Right. So let's talk about amazing love, and let's talk about sex, because it's so much fun to talk about. But like sex is changing. We're learning more about Tantra. I don't know if it's changing, but like we're getting more intimate with things, and we're talking more about it, and people are less comfortable, and it's not that awkward conversation. So, and I'm trying to say that I will share this. So as a 44-year-old woman, I just had my first orgasm, and it wasn't that I know, thank you very much. It's a big deal. But it was really my lack of self-love and the way I betrayed myself, and the consciousness I needed to come to. It was a lot of work for me to get to this point. And there are a lot of women like that. So now expressing that part of myself, I've kind of realized what I was seeking all that time is great. So, I know a lot of you are learning about Tantra, and a lot of you are interested in things. Mark's writing a book right now. It's very interesting about like the female orgasm and like what men don't know, which is fascinating. So let's talk about sex. What are you guys feeling like? What's sex like out there right now? Are you feeling comfortable? Are you afraid of STDs? Are you afraid of spiritual STDs? Like, where are you conscious men at with sex? Jonathan?
I want to talk specifically about the spiritually transmitted disease. Oh my God, that is one of the biggest things I've ever experienced sexually. It drains me so much, even in an intimate relationship. If I don't balance my chi, she just sucks it all out of me. She keeps it, and it's no longer for me. And so I'm actually celibate for most of the time. I do have sex occasionally, but it's with partners that I trust are going to give and receive the energy. It's not a one-way street. It's very cyclical. And so for me, it's like, I'd rather be celibate and horny, quite frankly, than to just exhaust all of my energy. And I think that's a huge thing, because a lot of people just focus on getting off their rocks or getting an orgasm. But sex for me is like, I learned from this Tibetan monk that sexual energy is the greatest driving force on this planet. I don't know about elsewhere in the cosmos, but here, sexual force is literally the creation of everything, all things, all living things. And so it's a super sacred energy. And I've got some big things to do. So I'm trying to focus that energy sexually into myself, like
Right.
ejaculating into yourself and creating a baby within you and birthing your true life, your highest potential.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily, for me, agree with chapter 11 of Think and Grow Rich, where that sexual transmutation is creation. Like, I create way more when I am celibate and I hold my seed and I keep my energy to myself and I don't express and I don't express. And like, so we all have to figure that out for ourselves, right? Like, there's not one way. But it's interesting to like kind of see, like, I feel drained when I have a partner who constantly wants to have sex with me. Like, it's like I'm not able to just kind of focus and be in my energy. I feel depleted. So
What I've seen out there is that people are just unhappy. And if they're in relationships, they're just sad. And sometimes they don't know they're sad and I'm very open with my conversations with men and women. And it's funny, I was in a mastermind group several years ago and we were on a trip and we thought we were going to be talking about net worth and, guy stuff and how many push-ups can you do and all that stuff. But the greatest area of pain for men turned out to be their relationship. And so we started exploring that a little bit and trying to find out why. My belief now, after several years of thinking about it, researching, is that it comes down to intimacy. And I'm working my way back to the sex here, don't worry. But it comes down to, how safe can you feel and how much can you exchange that energy? And most people, what they do, I call it the Kramerization of a relationship. Because, like Seinfeld would not have been friends with Kramer, except that Kramer lived across the way from him. So Seinfeld became friends with him because of proximity. And so often that's how we get into our relationships, is we Kramerize she's right there. He's right there. Let me get in a relationship with that person. And they don't meet the standards that Martina has for a man or that I have for a woman or whatever. But we're like, well, God, it's so much easier to know this devil than the devil I don't know, and go out and find somebody else and go through all this crap again. This is on an unconscious level, you settle. So when you talk to people these days and you figure out the sadness is because they don't have the intimacy below the superficial area, which is a real shame. And they don't know how to ask for it. And so if they were to figure out, okay, there's a dance here, the sexual energy builds on itself. And if you're not just interested in the getting the rocks off thing, and that's sex, but sex is more of an exchange of energy and it's a building. And I give you energy and all of a sudden you give it back to me. And now we've got more and we're building this big snowball of energy, and it culminates hours later in a beautiful peak experience. If you can create that and create more of that, the energy just continues to grow and the intimacy continues to grow. But you have to feel intimate, safe enough, and trust enough to be able to get to that point. I don't know if that made any sense at all, but it does to me.
total rambling. That was amazing.
I feel that the climate in dating right now is incredibly transactional. Yeah. And I guess my history has kind of been like, this is a version of working out in a weird way, right? Not only do you kind of develop this muscle, but you are consistently staying out of stressful states, depending on how you leverage that. I certainly have learned the hard way, like we are definitely exchanging energy. So you got to have some positives that go into it, but it's become increasingly difficult to live in a transactional place in dating and simultaneously completely detached from that mentality. I think there are ways to find out if someone is conscientious. I think there are ways to go into things with some of the right intentions and eventually walk away. Nonetheless, because there are so many options, you're paralyzed, you have analysis paralysis. And then if you are out and about and meeting people, you can sometimes fall whim to, lust and impulses. So again, it's kind of this very polar pendulum swing-esque environment that lends itself to misdirection and this, like, I think, very stark divide between what is helpful and what's hurtful. Nonetheless, it's very gray in the middle.
It is very gray in the middle. And then, these transactional experiences that are like, that heroin high, and then like we're left fleeting, we go through our energies and then we're stressed again. Like it's this perpetual state. And if you read anything about spiritual STDs, you really understand, like, even if a person's conscious and like has done some work, like you're really taking on all of their shit, like their undone work, like esoterically, like you're pulling on their shit. And you can see, like, I remember having intimacy with a man and who had depression. And I remember leaving and being like, wow, this isn't my depression. There's something else happening here. So we have to be way more aware about where we are having these engagements, and like the kind of work is like, am I willing to take on your shit so that I can have this intimate experience? And then am I going to have to go through what I am to clean myself, or to, to get spiritually clean myself, or to do whatever just to get rid of your crap? Is it worth it? Is the juice, what is it? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Isn't that what you guys always say? Martina, what were you going to say? Oh, I don't know.
I was just in total agreement with you. Sorry. I'm like, I, for me, honestly, the spiritual STDs do scare me, because I know when I get drained, what that does to me. It takes me a while to recover. It's not like the next day I'm myself again. It's
Weeks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever. But like we are the receiver too. So I think we probably grab more of that.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, Mark, you're muted. It's unmuted.
But we feel it too on our side. I know you're receiving, but at the same time, there's an energy exchange that we feel. We're not just giving it out blindly.
I think it's all in the level of consciousness, right? It's all being conscious of it, and going back to what I said earlier, right? Like how well do you communicate, and are you able to be, what Jesse was saying, like to me, that's where like being in integrity with who you want to be. It's where the sauce is, you know what I mean? So if you're able to be in integrity with who you want to be, even if things don't work out, and you're conscious of it, you're like, okay, but I did what was true to me at that moment. I respected how I felt in that moment. It didn't work out, but then it's not right or wrong. Is I respected me, he or she respected himself, and it just didn't align, And also there's this obsession now with a perfect angle. Like, what is that? Like how, this Instagram world is like, what's my best angle?
Right.
It's you, man. Like it's all of you, But I have a 21-year-old little sister and a little brother, and it's like, I want something serious. Why? Because. But why? Right? And like, they start a relationship, and the person, maybe he's not drinking, so she doesn't drink anymore, or vice versa, and you start becoming this other person, and then you're like, you meet your friends that have known you for years, and they're like, dude, she changed, or he changed. And then the next time you're in a different relationship, you're a different person. And even that, as a friend, how hard is that? Like, even for your family, you change every relationship, you wear a different outfit to match the person you're with. And like, what kind of friction is that creating within yourself, right? Because you know that that's not you, but you're like, I need to like soccer now. It's like, fuck, I hate sports, but I need to do it. If not, Aaron would never like me.
True.
Right? But it's even between guys, right? Like how often I walk in a room and it's like, Do you see the game? Yeah, of course. The game was great. I have not watched a game. I don't even know the last time I watched
What
it.
game?
Exactly. You know
There
what I
are
mean?
games.
But it's the same. As men, you see other men, you relate in the same way, right? And it's the locker room talk, and it's all of that. And but by not being in integrity with us, we are allowing the reality to exist. Because if we're all in alignment with ourselves, and we're like, okay, this locker room talk is not interesting, it's not useful, don't engage in it. Don't make the
But
comment.
it also takes balls to be able to say, like, that's not interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, and like, we need more men and more women having these conversations of like, this old way is not interesting. So like, let's talk about something that is interesting. And you know,
100%.
that's kind of where this next question leads, is like, what are you guys doing in your lives? Like, how are you spending your time? Like, where's your focus? Like, what's interesting for you right now? Because you're all in really different places. So
And I also want to be respectful of everybody's time. So we're on top of the hour.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody, I'm super grateful you guys are here with us. So I don't know if you guys have any other commitments. We have opened up for Q&As. We don't have any questions of right now. So we can just kind of keep free flowing. I just want to be respectful of everybody's time.
I'll just take a couple seconds and kind of try to tie a bow around a lot of these and hit a few points real quick. So I've kind of come up with, and it's oversimplified, but how do you explain in 5 seconds or less? I've gotten to a point in my life where if I can't have a conversation with you in the morning, you're not getting in my bed tonight. Like, that's, if we can't have a deep conversation and a connection, whether it's dating or whether it's just going to be a physical connection for whatever, as long as it lasts, there still has to be like an understanding and authenticity and presence, be present and be honest and all that. And going way back to one of the earlier questions, I've also noticed a lot of the women that are in my circle, whether friends or ex-girlfriends or whatever the case is, it seems like a lot of them are really looking for a man to be committed and just be there and be consistent. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Be consistent. If you say you're going to be here, be here. And just kind of echoing what both Martina and Rhonda said is, be honest and just have the balls to say whatever it is that is on your mind, and be authentic and be vulnerable and be raw. And, to some degree, I think, take that masculine energy and be the leader and say, look, this is me and this is where I'm at. And that's what I see them looking for. And I will say I'm very blessed to have a circle of really amazing, grounded, strong, focused women. And I think that is a difference somebody touched on too, that they are much more grounded in themselves and they want that honesty and they would rather have that honesty. And it's, I think some of the younger, not age-wise younger, but maybe younger in their experience or spirituality or life experience, that ignorance is bliss, and they want the fairy tale, or they want this idea that doesn't exist. And kind of what you said, Rhonda, just lie to me, make it sound great.
Buy me a big diamond and lie to me.
What was that?
Buy me a big diamond and lie to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of people out there.
And these women seem to have gotten to a point now where they say, you know what, I don't care about all the fancy shit. I just want somebody to be honest with me and be there for me and hold space for me and be consistent. And if you say you're going to do something, do it. And at the same time, they also seem to be a little bit more in touch with their feminine, where they look for the masculine of, look, yeah, you know what? Sometimes, what was David Data? I forget his book,
Way of the
but
Superior Man.
yes, The Way of the Superior Man. So in 2 seconds, ravage me, right? They want that masculine, strong, take me on the floor and handle things, be the leader, be the forge the path. They like and appreciate that, but also be able to be still and be calm and be in touch with your feminine and just be there to hold and accept and understand me. And I think that's kind of what we're moving and striving forward for, in balance between that masculine and feminine. And I think our society right now has a lot of, it's really polarized. And I think some folks are getting that idea of, let's just be open and honest and be authentic and be present with each other, however that is. And some really, like you said, are transactional and, I don't know, just all about eating ass for the night.
But some women also want to take their man too, right? Like, so we can't just swing it into that paradigm of like, we just want to be taken. And like, that's that thought process too, is like, there needs to be that element of like, let's explore and let's try things. And like, I'm going to try this on you, even if you're not really comfortable with it yet, or whatever those things are, you know, that's an important thing.
And
I mean,
I personally, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I love that. Like, I would rather, dude, you take over, take control. You know, I appreciate being with somebody that knows what they want and seeing their passion or their drive or their grounding to go toward that. Yeah, absolutely. Hot.
Yep, super hot.
You know what's funny, as we're talking a bit about this, Rhonda knows this about me. Like, if we go out to dance together, I'll actually be mostly dancing, right? Like, I really enjoy dancing. I go out to go dancing, and I have a lot of fun. And I remember when I was younger, you would go dancing to get girls, right? And you did this thing, you walk behind them, kind of like a creep, and you just start dancing behind them without saying anything, like you like touch their waist and shit.
Only in America.
Yeah, right. And I was dancing the other night, like about a month ago, and I was out and I had my eyes closed and I was just enjoying the music. And I feel somebody grab my waist. And then I turn around and it's this lady, it's this older lady. And I'm like, holy fuck. I felt so violated that somebody just came into my space like that, right? And I'm just like, oh my God, how many times did I do that, right? And to me, the main point of this conversation, like anything else I've said today, it's all about communication. Like, it's not, you want to lead. You want me to lead, let me know, or I can lead. If you don't like it, just let me know. But it shouldn't be anymore that this is how it has to be, because nothing has to be like anything. Everything can be however we want it, right? Like, I go out with my wife, we go dancing, she talks to her friend, I dance. Like, but if you're going, come get me, because if not, I'll stay here. You know what I mean? And it just, you know, and it's fine. But it's also like expressing it, right?
So let's switch topics a little bit and talk about open relationships, because it's a big hot button. There's a lot of guys out there. A lot of people follow Aubrey Marcus, and like, I have a lot of people come to me for coaching, men specifically, who want to like open up relationships or explore polyamory. And I think I personally don't think that we're at the point to have that conversation yet. I personally think that we're back a step or so, where we need to look at what our needs are, why we're not feeling fulfilled in the things that we have, to be able to become the person that can make that decision. Because opening ourselves up to that kind of relationship really requires a different level of ourselves. It's like a living plant medicine ceremony all the time, living that way. So what are your guys' feelings on open relationships and polyamory, and just kind of what's happening with people not wanting to just have one intimate partner? Jonathan, you had your hand raised.
I just want to give my 2 cents on this. I do have to leave after this comment, but specifically about polyamory, I have some friends that are practiced at it, they can do it. They have successful relationships. But then I also have friends that were married to their polyamorous partner, and now that person is having a child with somebody else. And so for me, polyamory is a practice ground. It is for people to learn how to love. If you love 10 people, you learn about 10 different people, and I respect that. That's cool. However, for me, personally, I'm monogamous. Monogamy is like the finished art. If you can love one being eternally, like not just a lifetime, but like eternally, that I feel like is the ultimate goal for myself personally. But for others, I think polyamory is a good way to go just to learn how to love, because a lot of us don't know how we like to be loved and we don't know how to love others. So I think I'm all for it. Not personally though.
Well said.
Plus, you're a very unique human.
He's an alien. He's not a human.
As you're leaving, right? Like, how old are you? Just for reference.
I'm 23.
Exactly. Like, you know what I mean? Like, holy fuck. But it's the honest work that brings you at 23 to have this level of like awareness and consciousness of like, what are your patterns? You know what I mean? Like, where is your hurt?
My patterns are familial based, like ancient karmic bloodlines. And so for me, love is something like my parents are divorced, specifically is what I'm talking about. A family unit, in my eyes, is the deepest connection you can have anywhere. Out of all the human relations you can make, you see my dog running around in the back. I love him like family, but I could never love him like my mother, or like I could love a child, you know? And so that's where my hurt is my family was kind of torn apart. And so I'm trying to heal that within myself. And for me, that's why polyamory won't work, because I don't want to deal with other people's energy unless I trust them. And so that's where I sit with that. But my patterns have been very overly sexualized. It's in our society. You guys were talking about it transactionally. The word that comes to mind for me is consumerism. We consume people. We consume ideas of people. We consume the flesh even, and I don't mean that as in cannibalism. I just mean that we consume other people. And that's a horrible pattern that I used to have. I feel like I've broken from that through celibacy. But just patterns of wanting to feel love, wanting to feel that connection, but not being able to, because quite frankly, there aren't people that love at the caliber that I do. And so it's rare for me to find somebody that has that openness and has that ability to be loved and to love.
Isn't it frustrating when you realize, like, oh my God, the love I've been looking for my whole life, I carry around in myself. Like, you want to be loved like you love yourself. Like, I fought that one.
Yes. Thank you, Jonathan.
You're welcome. Thanks for talking.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah. Good night.
Bye, buddy.
So here's a question that seems relevant to ask. Like, what's the middle ground between monogamy and I'm not a player, but I crush a lot?
Sorry, that's funny.
What can exist between those two paradigms? I mean, you've got the
Great
medium
question.
male that is, conquering and just this amazing force of like masculine and the representation of that in all of what it is, especially sexually. And then you've also got like, have a partner and commit to that partner and be consistent with that partner. And my whole career, my whole life has been to question everything and then try to find the root of truth. And, this is another tennis match. I obviously play a lot of tennis in my head, apparently. But, this is another concept that I try to like really unravel, and I can't seem to find a middle ground. Maybe there isn't a middle ground. I don't know, but middle ground seemed like a great place to be in a case like this, especially.
I mean, I can offer just a little something. I don't know if I'm on here or not.
You're on.
You're on.
Tap to speak. Am I speaking? Yes.
Yeah, you are.
I mean, I can offer a little something. So something that I need with a relationship is I need the ability to flirt, and maybe that even leads to a little like kiss or something, but anything further than that has to be like really discussed. So like I said before, it's like putting yourself in like a box is just not, it doesn't work for anybody. So finding something in the middle is actually something that I was very conscious of, and I was able to find a girl who was like, okay, like I want to be, monogamous with you, but I understand that like energy happens and moments happen with people. So like, be entranced with somebody for like an hour or an evening or something. But, if it goes to anything beyond that, then we need to have a discussion. So I just like to have that, like I'm in a relationship, but if I go out and I'm like, oh my God, this girl's amazing. Like, let's see what she got. Then I like hang out with her and like chill and, and kind of explore that a little bit. But it usually doesn't mean anything more than that. And it's just a way of like, kind of like having that flirting muscle and not letting that just die because you're in a relationship. And because I think that's not the way to go.
So and it makes it fun, right? Like there is an element of like validation that you get, you know what I mean? And like it's a way that like we perceive feeling ourselves, right? Like I know when I feel it, I'm like, oh, okay.
But even so, it's a way for your partner to see you in another light. Say, you were like whatever, having your arguments at home or dealing with money or whatever, but then you go out and like, oh, okay, I'm dancing and all these girls are like, oh, who's that? Okay, he looks special. So then Crystal looks at me and she's like, oh my God, he is a shining light. Let me get up on that, It kind of helps you like break that monotony of life when you allow that in, instead of instantly thinking that, oh, like he's flirting with her, they're flirting with him, that's bad. That's just bullshit.
I know, but there's a lot of programming in women that we got lots of, right?
And I deal with that, and I do deal with that, with Crystal sometimes, but that's usually when I'm not conscious enough. Like I'm letting it go too far. I'm not, respecting her in that moment. Like maybe I've had one too many tequilas, but generally that's what it stems from. But I think some sort of like exploration of that, like keeping your heart true to somebody, but also allowing a little dance through life. I mean, we're here to create existence, and our own way of doing it might not even be drawn yet. You have to create it yourself.
Beautifully said.
That was amazing, dude. I would still hug you right now. Also,
I feel like B-Star would give really good hugs.
B-Star's going to be starting his own channel. Yeah, just wait.
I loved your comment about monogamy feeling like monotony.
Yeah.
It's a nice that's a t-shirt, man.
Don't let your monogamy feel like monotony.
So we are 9:20 my time, so we're about 20 minutes on top of the hour.
Yeah.
So is there any parting things or anything else that anybody else wants to talk about? I mean, we can stay on. I don't care. I just, once again, I don't want to not do this.
I really appreciate this vulnerable space and like what we're creating, and each and every one of you are so special in my life and E's life, and like we're a big family, and coming together and really helping everybody who wants to be an expanded human, like be vulnerable in who they are. Like all of these things are just so important to be able to have you guys show up and just be so in truth and honest where you are. And like, that's really it, is watching other people do it is really what drives us to do it. So thank you so much for all being on this call. And we're going to be hosting the ladies call next week, and then we're going to be doing another call with men and women for both groups. So we'll have some interesting dialogue. So you're all welcome to come back to that. And gosh, it's the expanded human is growing, and it's really evolving into something really special. And the more I realize, like, it's less about us who started it and more about all of us together, coming together and creating stuff. So I feel like this call was really special, and it touched on a lot of key points that I really think are important right now. And I imagine we'll be following up on this. So for any of you guys watching in the replays or anything, my book, The Whole Method, is out. So please get your copy anywhere and everywhere books are sold. A lot of these points are covered in that book. And join our community if you're getting this in some other form somewhere at theexpandedhuman.com. And that's human, HUEMAN, for all the hues of the human. And just go out there and be yourselves and get naked and get raw. That's what the world is waiting for. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Blessings. Have a good night.
See you guys.
Thank you. Good night.